So here's number one. So number one in this thing is simply this, right? Don't think of yourself as a salesperson. All right. If you want to create more sales, don't think you've got to be a salesperson. That's the number one thing. In fact, you could probably, take that away and leave the session now if you want to, because that will be really important. Instead, I think of yourself as helping people to buy your product or service and finding out and helping them make sure they buy the right product or service from you. Because if you think like a salesperson, all you'll do is think you've got to have this sort of mental capacity of a salesperson, and you'll start conjuring up images of people that you have worked with or know who are salespeople. And maybe that's not the best way of going about things. So to help people to buy, you need to do these things. You need to be curious. And when you're in conversation with someone, either an existing customer or a potential new customer, you need to ask what I would call big questions. So think about the questions you want to ask. Think about, so you get lots of information back. Because if you ask kind of bland questions like, how's your business going? Or how do you see the next 12 months? Or, they're quite bland. Be more specific. What's the biggest challenge your organization faces right now? What's your best selling line? Or what would you like it to be in the next 3 months? That sort of thing, so be very, very specific. Because if you ask questions, the people who respond, i.e. the potential buyers of your product or service, will give you clues. But to enable you to make the most of those clues in their answers, you need to be very good at listening. And this is where this 80-20 ratio, I heard someone talking about this recently. They said, if you want to be really good at sales, then get the 80-20% ratio right between talking and listening. And it's 80% listening, 20% talking. And traditionally in sales, of course, we think it's all about talking. As long as we talk, we can, I've had people come for sales interviews over the years. They said, I've got the gift of the gab. I can talk the hind legs off a donkey, all those sort of cliche things. And it's not what we need these days. We need to be really good at asking great questions and listening carefully to the answers, because you will then build an opportunity. And once you build that opportunity, that's when you can start to, talk about someone buying your product or service. And if they do start to think about buying your product or service, what you've got to do is make it easy for them to buy whatever it is you offer. Because sometimes, it's not easy to buy our own stuff. When was the last time any of you tried to buy your own product or service? Okay, if you haven't done that recently, give it a go if that's possible. If you're a one-person organization, that's maybe not so easy. But just go through the process and see how easy is it to buy. And when we talk about buying, of course, one of the big things we want is to enable the buyer to buy from us, not you be seen to trying to sell to the buyer. If you let the buyer buy, psychologically, that will make a big difference. They need to feel as though they're the ones making decisions. They're the ones in control. They're not being kind of pushed into a corner or something like that. And a great way of doing that, and I learned this over 40 years ago when I first started out in sales, is offer your buyer a choice. So no matter what your product or service is, there's always going to be an opportunity to offer them 3 choices. And 3 kind of is the magic number. Don't give them 7 or 9, because they'll never make a decision. But 3, if we're offered 3 choices, we can often make that decision. So give your buyers 3 choices. Similar, but not the same. Okay, and there's lots of ways you can do that. And then hand it over to them. That's how I learned to sell advertising. It made such a difference. Taking along 3 ideas, putting them down in front of the customer, that sort of thing. Because if you offer 1 choice only, it kind of becomes a bit of take it or leave it. And that's not great, because then I'm no longer, as the buyer, in control. I want to make that choice. So give them those opportunities. So these are all the things you can do to think and help the buyer to buy, to think of yourself as helping people to buy. Put all these things into action. And as I mentioned already, have a look at what sales barriers you might be putting up in the way inadvertently. Because don't forget, in the B2B sector, lots of buying decisions are often made before there's any contact with you. So they look at your website, they look at your LinkedIn profile, whatever it might be. but just check there's no barriers there. And also, the other thing to check on this point is your customer buying process. We've talked about, doing a bit of mystery shopping yourself, and just review that customer buying process, because chances are you as an organization created that. You didn't get your customer to create it. And it's the customer who has to go through it. So, talk to your existing customers, find out what they think. So that's number one. Think of yourself as helping people to buy. Make it easy for them to buy. Number two, communication, which I think is probably the most important business skill you can have. Because communication is all about the way you talk to customers, your team, and your suppliers. And if you get good at communication, there's no doubt you will grow your sales. Very often, we're not very good at communication. So when we're communicating to potential new customers, what we tend to do is we tend to focus on things like our advertising message, our social media messages, maybe our website and its SEO, all that sort of stuff, emails, whatever. So there are lots of opportunities to communicate with potential new customers. But if you want to create more sales, the real trick is to be really good at communicating with your existing customers, because they're already buying from you. They already know you. They already maybe like you. They must trust you. Otherwise, they won't be buying from you. And here's a quote, and I can't remember where I got it from, but I've been tagging it around for a long time. So apologies to whoever gave me this quote or words to this effect. Your next big customer is an existing customer. Amongst your existing customers, the chances are there are many of them who are just waiting to spend more money with you. So how are you going to make that happen? Well, what you need to do is talk to them. Okay. And often when we talk to existing customers, it's at certain times. It's like, oh, the order needs renewing. The contract is up. Or there's something, they need to sort out with you. It's not working properly, or they're confused about something, or they might have a complaint even. That's when we usually talk to existing customers. We rarely talk to them at our, with us, calling them, out the blue kind of thing. And this is the trick. When you talk to existing customers, it's about talking to them on the phone. It's not emailing them. You can't get a sales conversation going on email very easily. So give them a call, because if you talk to them on the phone, they'll know who you are. So it's not a cold call, for goodness sake. And, talk to them find out more about what's going on. And the best way to do this is to say you're ringing up to check that the product or service that they're using from you is working as well as it can do, so that you're making sure they're getting the best value from the money that they're investing in your product or service. And then, and you'll find out more. And on the phone, things will emerge. Okay. They won't emerge in an email conversation. They will on the phone, or if you're in direct, or go and see your customers, or talk to them on Zoom like we're talking now potentially. But it's got to be a live interaction to make it really work. One way of doing it is, if you've got, a group of regular clients, is every so often, maybe once a quarter, arrange to go and have a client review with them. Go through everything. They're not going to say, oh, no, I'm not interested in checking I'm getting great value from your products or services, or they're working really well. Okay, you can do it on Zoom. You can go and see them in person, depending on where they're located, of course. It might only be half an hour, but you're there with them, you're talking to them, and then you can explore other opportunities. Because how many of your customers fully understand what you have to offer? Do they know absolutely everything that you do? I suggest probably not. And the last thing you want to hear when you're, with customers is someone saying, well, Trevor, if only I'd known you did that, I would have bought it from you. I just didn't know you did that. So talk to your existing customers. Okay. We often shy away from that, because if we often get this negative mindset that we think if we call up an existing customer, they'll suddenly decide they're not good. Oh, thanks for calling. I was going to ring you and cancel my order with you anyway. Or, oh, thanks for ringing, but, your product is rubbish. It's never worked for me properly. We get into this negative mindset. We think we're just, we're going to open up. You've got to think positively, okay? These people want to work with you. That's why they're buying your product or service already. And they're keen probably to work with you more, if only they know what you offer and what you could do for them. So open up those conversations. And when you do have those conversations, make sure you clarify things. I worked with a lot of people over the years, and they say things like, we got asked to put this proposal together, Trevor. We sent it all out. We heard nothing ever again. And usually that's because there was no clarification and the proposal went out with the wrong information in it. So ask these questions just so I understand. Okay. That's one of my favorites. And I also say things like, am I right in thinking? So whenever people call me, I always ask these questions just so I understand. Are you asking me too? Am I right in thinking that what you want the outcome of any work we do together to be? So clarify what your customer really wants from you. Don't ever assume. It's a dangerous ground, dangerous to play the assumption game in business. And we do it all the time because it's just easy to do somehow. And then we wonder why things don't work out. And when you do ask these questions, the key thing, which most salespeople aren't very good at, is you need to then, you need to shut up. Because if you've asked those questions, wait for the answers. Don't interrupt. Don't fill the gaps. People are so good at filling gaps. People like to be talking all the time. Don't do it. Right. Number 3 is you need to respond quickly. So if someone makes an inquiry of your product or service, you need to be alert and ready for when that happens. So my question to you is, how quickly do you respond? Is it within 5 minutes? Is it in an hour? Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a month? I went to a couple of business shows last year, and I gave I had conversations with at least 3 or 4 people who said to me they would get back to me. Here we are, months later. I've not heard anything from any of them, and they were, and I was interested in what they were offering. It wasn't the other way around. So here's a guy who came on my podcast, Nicholas Vandenberg from Chili Piper from New York, and they provide software to big corporations, but the point is that they provide software that means that no responses are missed. They're all acted upon quickly because they did a bit of research and they discovered this figure, 78%. And 78% relates to, if you're the first to respond, you've got a 78% chance of winning the business. Because, in the B2B sector, we do a lot of research early. So I might have identified 4 people who I think can help me market my podcast, for example. So I drop them a note, all 4 of them, the same spec. The first one who responds has got a 78% chance of winning the business, according to their research. So it's worth being on your toes and getting that response. You don't have to have a full-blooded response. It could be a holding response. If you do send out a response and you do get a chance to put a proposal out to somebody, then here's a few rules. These are the sort of things you might want to take a screenshot of because they're not going to be on the screen very long. So if you put a proposal together, make sure it's about them, not you. They know you already. They've researched you. That's why they've invited you to do a proposal. So many proposals go out with all the stuff. The first 6, 10, 24 pages are all about the company. Hey, this is who we are, blah, because it's a cut and paste template. Terrible. Okay, don't do that. Make it personal. Keep it succinct. Cut all the nonsense out, the flowery bits. If you do a covering email or, do a little PS. PSs apparently are good. And post it as well. Print it out and post it. Because they might not see it in their email amongst all the thousands of emails they're getting. Chances are they'll see it in their post. And when you do put it together, focus on the benefits. That's what they're going to get, not the features, which is what you put into it. Things like the problems you're going to solve, that choice we mentioned, timing, logistics, and investment. Now, what do I mean by investment? Well, usually when we're talking to people about level, the money bit, if you like, we use phrases like the price is, the cost is, the rate is. That's all about you. It's your price. It's their cost. Cost sounds quite negative. Cost sounds to me as though it's something I'd rather not do. The rate is, So here's a tip. Use the word investment. Your investment is, put that on all your proposals, okay? Because it is an investment in your product or your service, whatever that is. If people hire me, they're investing in my time, my expertise, my advice to help them. So put that together. I did a workshop, was it last week, I think, or the end of the week before? Select group of people, 5 businesses from different businesses got together, hired me in for a couple of hours to work with them on their sales. And this was a big thing in the feedback afterwards. They said that was the really most important thing. And then, of course, when you do respond, be reliable. So if you say you're going to get back to me on Tuesday, get back to me on Tuesday. All right. There's no excuse for being unreliable. When you're responding, when you're delivering your product or service, just be reliable. It makes such a difference. Right. Number 4 is make best use of your time. And gosh, if I had a fiver for every time someone said to me, well, this is all great, Trevor, but I just don't have time to do all this. In business, we've always got time to do the right things, the priorities, the most important things. What we tend to do is we spend a lot of time on stuff we don't need to spend time on. Just gets in the way, and then suddenly the time has gone. Because it's this thing about being proactive. You're being proactive by being here today, this morning, for the half an hour, whatever you're going to be here for. Because that's an opportunity to make things happen. What we're good at in business is being reactive. And that's what I mean by that is we wait for things to happen and then we do it. So an email comes in, we're onto it, hopefully. A phone call, something we've got to sort out. We're good at that. And very often we use reactive things as an excuse for not being proactive. So in other words, we say, well, I can't possibly do that because I've got all these tasks to do. Now, often that means, especially if you're a business leader, you're not delegating very well, or you're spending far too much time on stuff you don't need to. Here's a little grid. You might want to take a screenshot of this. Okay. I use this with quite a few customers. Simply this, it's called what I call the customer maintenance grid. Very simple. All you do on the top row under customer spend, you put your customer where they are on the high spenders, low spenders ratio. So somewhere along there, your customer will be in that spend mix. So your biggest spender goes one end and your lowest the other end. And then just put where the same company fits on the low, high maintenance. In other words, how much time and effort are you putting into that customer? Now, if you've got customers who are in the low spend, high maintenance box, that's where you're probably wasting your time. You're spending a disproportionate amount of time to create a low income from that customer. It's a great way of being really thorough. I mean, I sometimes work with organizations just on this alone, okay? And it's a bit of an eye-opener, okay? And then they've got to make the decision what to do afterwards. Right, number 5 of my 5 ways to create more sales is to surprise and delight your customers, okay? I picked this phrase up, again, a long time ago. But I love it. And what it means is that you do something that costs you next to nothing in time and money, and the customer thinks it's great. So I'll give you an example. Before lockdown, I drink loose leaf tea. There's a shop opened in Truro called Tugboat before lockdown, and they do loose leaf tea. And I would go in there anonymously, buy stuff. I say anonymously. I mean, I'm like just an ordinary punter off the street like everybody else. During lockdown, of course, you had to buy it online. So I bought some online. They send me the tea. They send me a little invoice. And underneath the invoice, they've handwritten this message. Hi, Trevor. Many thanks for your order. All the best and stay safe. Mike and Jess. I have no idea who Mike and Jess are. They've no who idea I am. But they've spent, a minute writing that. And now I share it with the world. Personal thank you notes are a great way of surprising and delighting your customers. But they've got to be handwritten, not emailed. You need to post them or give them out. Don't email them because they just get lost in all the other email stuff. Okay? Make it personal, because remember, people buy from people. So there we go, folks. There are 5 ways. I'm just going to do a quick review for you, and then we've got a bit of time for any questions that you might want to ask, and I'll open it all up to everybody. So let's remind ourselves of what those 5 were. So number 1, don't think of yourself as a salesperson. Help your customers to buy. Get rid of any barriers that are in the way. Give them the choice, all that stuff. Number 2, be very good at communication. And that means talking to your existing customers in particular, talking to them. Number 3, be ready to respond quickly. Check your response times at the moment, but look to improve them. Look to be the first out the blocks if you think other people will have received some stuff. Number 4, make best use of time, okay? You've all got plenty of time. You just need to use it really well. And number 5, surprise and delight your customers. Right. Finally, I would say enjoy what you do. Because if you enjoy it, and I've enjoyed delivering this for you this morning, if you enjoy it, then it will rub off on your customers and your potential customers. And they'll think, hey, I'm going to enjoy working with this person or this organization. Because who wants to work with an organization or a person they don't enjoy working with? It becomes a bit of a pain in the backside then, doesn't it?